Listen, your reality right now, it's just old news. It's yesterday's paper. It's the echo of what you've been assuming up until this moment. So stop treating it like it's the final verdict. Stop bowing down to it like it's the truth. Reality is always a step behind. Always. What you see right now is the delayed reaction of what you thought, believed, and assumed days, weeks, or even years ago. So if you don't like it, fine. Ignore it. Because here's the rule: you can't fight the old and win. You can't argue with the reflection in the mirror and expect it to change. You can't beg reality to shift. You shift first, you assume first, and then reality has no choice but to follow. So when your bank account screams empty, ignore it. Assume wealth. When your relationship looks cold, ignore it. Assume love. When your health feels broken, ignore it. Assume wholeness. This is not delusion, it's direction. It's not denial, it's design. You are choosing the picture before it develops. You're deciding the ending before the story catches up. The world will tell you to be realistic, but being realistic is just code for stay stuck in what already is. And you're not here to stay stuck. You're here to create. So the job is simple: keep assuming over and over, even when it looks like nothing's happening, even when reality shouts the opposite, especially then, because assumption repeated becomes belief, and belief lived in long enough becomes fact. Ignore your reality. Just keep assuming. That's not weakness. That's power. That's how you take control back. That's how you stop reacting and start creating. Reality is always a step behind your assumptions. What you see in front of you right now is not the living proof of who you are in this moment, but the residue of who you have been in thought, in feeling, in assumption. It is the echo of the inner states you carried days, weeks, months ago. Life reflects you, but it does so with a delay. Just like the stars you see in the sky are shining light that left them years ago, your current circumstances are shining the light of your past assumptions. The mistake most people make is treating this delayed reflection as permanent truth, as if what is showing up now has the power to define what must always be. But the truth is simpler. The moment you shift your assumptions, the moment you plant a new seed in imagination, the reflection must eventually change. Think of it like a shadow. When you move your hand, the shadow doesn't jump instantly, it follows with the tiniest delay. Reality works the same way. The shadow you are looking at may be bent or twisted, but if you want it to straighten, you don't attack the shadow. You move the hand. The outer world is always that shadow, and your assumptions are the hand. If you focus on the shadow, all you get is frustration. If you focus on the hand, the shadow has no choice but to align. This is why people struggle when they try to change their lives by effort alone. They wrestle with money by working harder. They fight with relationships by pleading or controlling. They force health with constant worry. Yet they never touch the root, the assumption. They're patching the surface, not shifting the cause. The cause is always within, and the within is always one step ahead. If you live in the assumption of abundance, life must catch up. If you dwell in the assumption of love, life must catch up. If you saturate yourself with the assumption of wholeness, life must catch up. The catch up may take time, but it is inevitable. The delay between assumption and manifestation is not there to frustrate you. It is there to test your persistence. The question is never, is it working? Because it is always working. The question is, will you hold the new assumption long enough for the echo to arrive? If you change assumptions every other day, you keep planting new seeds and uprooting them before they can sprout. Then you say the law does not work, when in fact it works so perfectly, it gives you exactly the inconsistency you have sound. But if you remain faithful, if you carry your assumption long enough, the outer world must yield, for it is always one step behind. This also means your current reality does not matter. It may scream at you with evidence of lack, loneliness, or struggle, but it is only the past reflected back. The present moment, lived in assumption, is more powerful than the weight of all appearances. Appearances are temporary, assumptions are creative. Once you understand that appearances are nothing more than delayed feedback, you stop fearing them. You stop bowing to them. You stop letting them dictate your mood. You know that what you assume now is the seed of what must come, regardless of what your senses tell you in this instant. It is like turning the steering wheel of a car. If you turn it sharply to the right, the car does not leap instantly. It shifts gradually. You would never panic and say, it isn't working, just because the car didn't snap direction the second you touched the wheel. You trust the system. You trust the momentum. The same is true with assumptions. The moment you turn your mind toward a new state, reality has already begun its shift. The delay is not proof of failure, but proof of process. So when you look around at your life and see circumstances that contradict your desires, remind yourself that these are not the result of who you are right now. They are the residue of old states. They are the leftovers of yesterday's assumptions. You are not bound by them. You are free in every moment to choose again, to plan again, to assume again. And the moment you do, reality, always one step behind, must follow. Fighting the present only reinforces it. The moment you argue with your reality, you breathe life into it. What you resist, you feed. If you stand in front of a mirror and dislike what you see, shouting at the reflection does nothing but keep your focus on the very image you want to change. The more energy you pour into fighting appearances, the more you bind yourself to them. Life is reflective, not reactive. It does not change because you struggle with it. It changes because you shift the state that gives rise to it. Most people believe they can wrestle their way into a new reality. They think if they work harder, push stronger, fight longer, they can defeat the circumstances in front of them. But all that effort only circles them back into the same trap. Circumstances are not causes. They are effects. And when you treat effects as if they are causes, you loop endlessly in the same pattern. Fighting the present is like punching water. No matter how hard you swing, the water absorbs your blows and returns to its shape. You cannot break the shape from the outside. You must pour a new substance into the container, and then the water rearranges itself. The present is always neutral until you give it meaning. When you say, "This is terrible, this is unfair, this is hopeless," you fortify it, you tie yourself to it with emotional chains. You make it heavier by naming it so. When you refuse to argue, when you decline to label it, you weaken its hold. It becomes only a shadow, a passing phase, a delayed echo. And then you are free to choose again. You are free to plant a new assumption, unencumbered by the weight of resistance. Resistance feels powerful in the moment because it is charged with emotion. Anger, fear, frustration, they surge through the body and create the illusion that something is being accomplished. But energy is directionless without focus. When your focus is on what you hate, you feed what you hate. When your focus is on what you lack, you expand what you lack. Fighting the present is a way of bowing down to it, of declaring it the ultimate authority. Yet the truth is, the present is only an effect of what you have previously assumed. It holds no power except the power you continue to give it. The law of assumption does not demand that you love your current circumstances. It asks that you see them for what they are, temporary echoes. You do not need to fight the echo of your old song. You need only begin singing a new one. Fighting makes you sing the same tune louder, replaying the old melody again and again. But assuming anew is like shifting to a new frequency. When you dwell in the end of your desire, when you persist in the picture of your chosen reality, the old dissolves on its own. There is no fight necessary, only faith and persistence. Think of weeds in a garden. If you spend all your time yanking them up in anger, you exhaust yourself. But even as you pull them, more sprout, because the soil still holds the old seeds. A wiser way is to plant stronger seeds of what you desire. The new growth will eventually choke out the weeds. Your assumption is that seed. If you keep planting it, nurturing it, returning to it, the weeds of the present lose their dominance without a fight. The irony is that the more you ignore the present, the faster it changes. What you refuse to wrestle with loses its power. What you refuse to argue with dissolves. It has no fuel without your attention, but the moment you push against it, you press it deeper into being. Fighting the present hardens it. Assuming the new reality softens it. What you assume consistently and calmly has more strength than all the frantic struggling in the world. You do not defeat the present by force. You dissolve it by indifference. You rise above it by choosing where you place your attention. Your assumption is the steering wheel, and the present is simply where the car happens to be. Yanking at the road does nothing. Holding the wheel steady does everything. Assumption repeated becomes belief. Belief becomes fact. The mind is impressionable, and what you choose to feed it consistently shapes the world you live in. A single thought may pass by without consequence, but a thought entertained again and again begins to leave a trace. That trace deepens into a groove, and the groove becomes the path your mind naturally follows. This is the process by which assumption hardens into belief, and belief eventually expresses itself as fact in your external reality. Nothing appears on the outside that was not first planted and repeated within. When you assume something, you are trying on a state of being. You imagine yourself as wealthy, as loved, as healthy, as free. In the beginning, it may feel like play, like something separate from what you call reality. But each time you return to it, each time you allow yourself to feel its truth, you deepen the impression. The subconscious does not question, it does not argue. It only accepts what is impressed upon it with consistency and emotion. The repeated assumption becomes familiar, and what is familiar becomes believable. Belief is nothing more than a thought you have accepted as true. It was not handed to you by fate. It was not carved into your being without choice. Every belief you carry was once an assumption you repeated until it no longer felt optional. This is both liberating and sobering. Liberating, because it means you can change any belief by assuming differently. Sobering, because it means the limitations you carry are only the products of assumptions you once entertained. If you believe you are unlucky, it is because you assumed it often enough to accept it as truth. If you believe you are irresistible, it is because you assumed it until it settled into the core of your identity. The step from assumption to belief is one of persistence. Most people stop short. They assume for a moment, for a day, perhaps for a week, but when the outer world does not immediately reflect it, they declare it false. What they fail to understand is that reality is always the echo, not the origin. You do not look for instant confirmation. You continue to assume until the assumption feels natural. When it feels natural, it has become belief. And once it has become belief, it does not need outer proof to support it. The outer proof must come because the belief has taken root. This is why rituals, affirmations, and repeated imaginal acts are powerful. It is not because the words or images themselves carry magic, but because the repetition wears a path into the subconscious. Repetition convinces. What you repeat consistently becomes difficult to dislodge, whether it is empowering or destructive. You may have repeated to yourself for years that you are not good enough, and now it feels like a belief so ingrained it must be reality. But it was never reality. It was an assumption carried so long that it hardened into fact. The process that created that limitation can be reversed. By assuming the opposite, by repeating the new picture with persistence, you form a new belief. And the new belief must express outwardly as fact. The world bends itself to the weight of your beliefs. If you believe people are untrustworthy, you will meet untrustworthy people. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you will experience scarcity. If you believe you are magnetic, opportunities and people are drawn to you without effort. Belief organizes perception, and perception filters reality. Two people can walk through the same street and one sees danger while the other sees opportunity, all because of the assumptions they have repeated into belief. The transformation happens quietly. At first, the assumption may feel like pretending, like a game. But as you repeat it, it begins to feel comfortable. As it feels comfortable, it feels true. Once it feels true, it is belief. And the world cannot resist a belief. It must mirror it, for belief is the language the subconscious speaks. And the subconscious directs all outward expression. To change your life, you need not fight against the facts you dislike. You need only repeat the assumptions that align with the facts you desire long enough and steadily enough for them to sink into the level of belief. When they are believed, they are inevitable. Ignoring appearances is not denial, it's creation. To ignore does not mean to pretend the circumstance is not there. It means you refuse to give it the authority to define you. Appearances are the lagging footprints of your previous assumptions. They are delayed reflections of past states, not living truth. When you look at something you do not like and decide to treat it as powerless, you are not lying to yourself. You are choosing to shift the focus of creation back to its source. Denial is pushing against what is there with resistance. Ignoring is moving your attention away from it and into the picture you want to establish. The world has trained most people to treat appearances as law. If the bank account is low, they say it is fact. If love feels absent, they say it is fact. If the body feels sick, they say it is fact. But all of these are only appearances, shadows of what has been assumed and persisted in before. To anchor your faith in appearances is to tie yourself to old states, to let yesterday dictate today. But to ignore appearances is to say, I know the source is within me, and I will not let a shadow control my imagination. Creation always begins invisibly. The tree you seed began as an unseen seed in the soil. The structure you walk through began as an unseen blueprint in the architect's mind. The relationship you experience began as an unseen assumption in your consciousness. When you ignore appearances, you are refusing to be hypnotized by the unfinished stage of the process. You are saying, yes, the seed has not yet sprouted above the ground, but I know it is growing. That is not denial, it is recognition of a deeper truth. To deny appearances is to wrestle with them, To insist they should not be, to spend your energy in frustration. To ignore appearances is to let them pass like clouds while you fix your gaze on the sky you have chosen. The clouds may be thick, they may linger, but they do not alter the vastness of the sky. Your imagination is the sky and appearances are the temporary clouds. When you ignore them, you are not erasing them by force. You are letting them dissolve in the presence of a greater vision. Ignoring appearances requires discipline because the senses are persuasive. They shout, they demand attention, they insist that what they show is all there is. But the senses only report the past. They are messengers of what has already been assumed, not prophets of what must come. If you give them authority, they trap you in cycles. If you ignore them, you free yourself to create cycles anew. You cannot serve two masters. Either you serve appearances and live bound to them, or you serve imagination and allow appearances to bend. This is why the practice of living in the end is powerful. When you see yourself already in possession of what you desire, when you feel the reality of the fulfilled state, you are ignoring appearances without resistance. You are withdrawing your energy from the shadow and placing it in the substance. The world may call this foolishness, but the world is only the stage of delayed effects. Those who cling to appearances keep replaying the same script, but those who dare to ignore appearances rewrite the play entirely. To ignore is not to be careless or blind. It is to be selective with your attention. You do not feed what you do not want. You do not pour emotion into the echo of old states. You let them fade, knowing they are powerless before a sustained assumption. Creation is not the denial of the unwanted, but the choice of the wanted. When you fix your inner gaze on the reality you prefer and return to it again and again, you are ignoring appearances in the most creative sense. You are stepping into authorship instead of reacting as a character. The power lies in knowing that ignoring does not mean weakness. It does not mean passivity. It means mastery. It means you understand appearances are not the cause. They are only the effect. And if they are the effect, they have no authority over the new because you hold within.